out today. I'm gonna work on this mini bike I bought for my son that he is not interested in riding. He rode it once, laid it down, and that was enough for him. So anyway, I have no real use for it. So I'm going to try and fix the few little things that are wrong with it and sell it. First on the list is that the seat is not mounted properly. I guess it originally had a post seat. Somebody mounted this thing, kind of bolted on there, and then just set against the post. I'm thinking of making it, since this is a hardtail chopper style anyway, I'm thinking I'm gonna put a hinge on the front, springs on the back, just like a chopper seat, hardtail chopper seat, or bobber seat. Or I also have to fix the guard, make a rear chain guard, clean it up, paint it. Nuts are missing on the mount for that. It's a fake gas tank. It has a replacement engine in it. This is not the original engine for this bike. It's one of the Predator 212s. The gearing is the same, so it doesn't actually have a higher top speed at this point. It just accelerates like a son of a bitch. So anyway, that's what's on the list for today. Is I think just getting the seat taken care of today. And we'll move on to the chain guards and stuff on another day. One project at a time. I haven't been in the shop in a long time, and it's time to get back into doing stuff, and part of that is clearing out some of the massive amount of clutter. I have parts to gold wings and everything everywhere. So okay, so here's what we had going on. This is the plate that was on the seat. It had been just bolted there, so the spring was the metal itself, the bending of the metal. That hole was crudely drilled off center. My current thinking is I'm going to use the plate as it was on here. I'm going to chop it off there, weld hinge on there. Either drill a new hole and tack it, or weld it directly to this pipe. I'm thinking I probably want to get cross holes there, directly in line with that there. So you got two vertical holes with two cross holes right there, which will really serve no purpose. So I'm thinking I want to fill those in. Put something over them to patch over them, just to strengthen that. I'd hate to see that bend on somebody. So we'll fix those, and we'll attach the hinge part here, and then we have to figure out where to mount the springs off of. This isn't the right seat for this, so there's no provision on there. I apologize for the poor video quality. It is my phone. That's all I have at the moment. As you can see, the plastic is all chewed up on there because the seat post was just sitting on the seat post. So I'm trying to decide how to mount the springs at the rear. And do I need to, or can I spring it off of the seat post somehow? Seat post is pretty beat up. I'm gonna think about it here for a second while I work on the hinge. Okay, so here's what I've gotten done so far. Rebent this bracket. Oop, wrong way. This bracket was basically completely flat when I started, but you can tell by the ridges here that it had bend before. What I did is I bent it so these tabs are firmly against that, providing support to keep it from rocking when it's tightened down. This now steps up to raise the front of the seat a little bit to give it some room to pivot. This bracket has now been bent to match to help strengthen that and be welded to that. So I tacked it on there and then realized, luckily I just tacked it and tried to fit it because I realized I put it on upside down. The hinge needs to be that way. So I gotta rebend this and try it again. Okay. So here was the basic idea. Springs, hinge. Gonna make something to kind of capture the springs back here so they don't. But I discovered a problem, something I hadn't anticipated till after I welded it solid, because I didn't notice it before when the hinge was loose on here and only tacked. It was wobbling, but now even with that hinge is not. It's got too much slop, so the seat when you sit on it just can wobble all over the place and it feels really weird. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do about that. Hinge was never really meant for that type of application, but I'll have to figure out something. I'll probably have to cut it back off and come up with something else to do for a hinge. Something a little heavier duty. Maybe take a heavier duty hinge, cut it down to where it fits over the tube better, but a wider, more stable hinge. And then I can weld it onto that. Yeah, I know, I still need welding practice. It's not the best welds, but they're definitely burned in, so. And up here, I had to make a mount for the spring. The seat had a tab that came back that was supposed to slide under something, so I made a plate that went under that with drilled and tapped 2/4 20 holes. Then made a plate to go over the top that holds the springs, that threads into that. That holds the springs to the seat very securely. And I was going to either put some cups or some... I was either going to put some cups that this thing springs would sit in, or maybe some sort of post that the springs would sit on to help keep those in place. And maybe even possibly put something on the back side to help reinforce the fender due to the extra stress it's going to take from that. Or maybe even from there back to help reinforce. I don't know. We'll see. But first, and the biggest problem is I have to figure out what to do about that. Okay, so I actually did figure this out. So I really had nothing to lose, and I cut the hinge pin out, tightened up the loop on the center section of it and both the outers so that they just fit this screw, well actually long small bolt, so that I could tighten up on it, welded them Once I got it to where there was no real slop with the screw going, being able to go through, welded them into position so they wouldn't open back up, and then tighten the screw up so that I still have hinge, but not an excessive amount of play. It's pretty tight, but it will still hinge. So I think that should do it, because it doesn't have to move much. But now all I gotta do is make some purchase for the spring, and I think we'll be good on that part of it. And I'll clean all this up, and it'll all be painted when I repaint the frame. But most of the hinge actually hides under the mock tank. Get it situated here. Hold on a second. Like that. So there's really not much of it visible, but it'll all be painted black like the frame anyway. And I'll give it kind of that bobber look, and also soften up the ride a little bit. Because with the pegs so far forward on this, it's really tiring to stand on the pegs for any length of time at that angle. With these pull-back bars and those forward pegs, it's really taxing if you're doing the bumpy stuff and trying to stand up on the pegs for any length of time. Yeah, so with a big soft tire and the spring seat now, it actually rides pretty soft. And it doesn't, I mean, it's got a little wobble to it. But it's not bad. You barely notice when you're actually riding it. So now it's got the factory front suspension, and it's got a spring seat, so it's a lot like a bobber should be. Anyway, got the perches on there. Welding's pretty ugly, but I just make sure that it doesn't slide sideways off the fender or anything. They're not really structural. Alright, I got to finish cleaning up my tools and go home. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. Thanks.